19 black R&B legends who drank themselves to death.
I did not realize.
What if the real killer behind some of the greatest voices in music history wasn't violence, illness, or even drugs, but something poured at every party? From Whitney Houston to Billie Holiday, the pattern is hard to ignore. Before you go further, comment below, did you realize alcohol played this role, and subscribe for stories the industry rarely tells? Whitney Houston. Few voices in modern music history have reached the level of Whitney Houston. With over 200 million records sold worldwide, 6 Grammy Awards, and a string of timeless hits like I Will Always Love You and Greatest Love of All. She wasn't just a superstar, she was a global benchmark for vocal perfection. Critics and fans alike have often described her as one of the greatest singers of the 20th century. A rare combination of technical mastery and emotional depth that seemed almost untouchable. But behind that flawless image was a far more fragile reality. Over the years, Whitney struggled with substance use, and alcohol became part of a dangerous pattern, especially when combined with other drugs. One of the most medically significant factors in her final hours was the interaction between alcohol and cocaine. When consumed together, the body produces a compound known as cocaethylene, which is far more toxic to the heart than either substance alone. It increases the risk of sudden cardiac arrest, impairs judgment, and can lead to rapid loss of consciousness. On February 11, 2012, at the age of 48, Whitney Houston was found unresponsive in a bathtub at the Beverly Hilton Hotel in Los Angeles. The official cause of death was accidental drowning, with cocaine use and heart disease listed as contributing factors. Evidence indicated that alcohol was also present, playing a critical role in the chain of events that led to her losing consciousness in the water. Her death shocked the world not just because of how it happened, but because it underscored a difficult truth. Even a voice that once seemed invincible could not escape the cumulative impact of years of strain and substance use. Whitney Houston's legacy remains untouchable, but her story is also a powerful reminder of how silent, gradual damage can undo even the most extraordinary lives. Jimi Hendrix.
You can hear happiness staggering.
In just 4 years, Jimi Hendrix didn't just rise to fame, he reshaped the very language of modern music. Widely regarded as the greatest guitarist of all time, his work on tracks like Purple Haze and Voodoo Child redefined what electric guitar could express. His performance of the Star-Spangled Banner at Woodstock became a cultural landmark, capturing the tension of an era in a single unforgettable moment. Hendrix wasn't simply playing music, he was reinventing it in real time. But behind the innovation was a life moving at an unsustainable pace. Constant touring, intense pressure, and the expectation to continuously break new ground took a toll. Like many artists of his time, Hendrix turned to substances to cope, alcohol becoming a regular presence, especially in combination with other drugs. On the night of September 17, 1970, in London, he consumed a significant amount of red wine along with Vesparax, a powerful barbiturate sleeping medication. The prescribed dose was minimal. He reportedly took far more seeking rest. The combination proved fatal. Barbiturates and alcohol both depress the central nervous system, and together they can suppress vital reflexes, especially the body's ability to respond to choking. In the early hours of September 18th, Hendrix vomited in his sleep. Unable to wake or react, his body could not protect itself. He asphyxiated quietly without struggle at just 27 years old. His death became one of the most tragic entries in what would later be known as the 27 Club, a stark symbol of talent lost too soon. Hendrix left behind a revolutionary legacy, but his final moments reveal a sobering truth. Even the most extraordinary genius is still bound by the limits of the human body. In his case, alcohol didn't just contribute to his death, it took away his ability to survive it. Billie Holiday.
Long time. Now, baby,
Few voices have ever carried as much pain, truth, and raw humanity as Billie Holiday. Known for haunting masterpieces like Strange Fruit and God Bless the Child, she didn't just sing songs, she lived them. Her voice, fragile yet piercing, transformed personal suffering into something universal. Critics often described her style as emotionally unmatched, a delivery so honest it could leave listeners shaken after a single note. But the depth of that emotion came from a life marked by trauma. Born into extreme poverty, Billie endured abuse, exploitation, and systemic racism from an early age. As fame grew, so did the weight of her past. To cope, she turned to substances, heroin, and heavily alcohol. Drinking became a constant, not for celebration, but as a way to numb memories that refused to fade. Over time, that dependence took a severe physical toll. By the late 1950s, her health had deteriorated dramatically. Years of chronic alcohol use led to advanced liver cirrhosis, a condition where the liver becomes scarred and unable to function. Her body began to shut down fluid accumulated in her lungs and abdomen, her breathing became labored, and her strength faded rapidly. In May 1959, she was admitted to a New York hospital in critical condition. What followed was as tragic as it was revealing. While lying in a hospital bed, weak and near death, she was placed under police guard due to drug-related charges. She could barely move, yet she was treated as a criminal in her final days. On July 17, 1959, at just 44 years old, Billie Holiday died from complications of liver disease and multiple organ failure. Her story is more than a loss. It's a reflection of how unresolved pain can evolve into self-destruction. In Billie's case, alcohol didn't start the damage, it finished it. Natalie Cole. Born into one of music's most legendary families, Natalie Cole carried both a gift and a burden. As the daughter of Nat King Cole, she inherited a legacy that few artists could ever escape. Yet she proved her own brilliance, winning 9 Grammy Awards, selling millions of records, and delivering timeless hits like This Will Be and the unforgettable virtual duet, Unforgettable, which reunited her voice with her father's in a moment that defined her career. But behind the elegance and success was a long, private struggle. The pressure of living up to an iconic name combined with the emotional weight of fame led Natalie into decades of substance use. Alcohol and drugs became coping mechanisms, ways to manage expectations, silence self-doubt, and navigate an industry that rarely slowed down. By her own admission, these habits took hold during the early years of her career and persisted for a long time. To her credit, Natalie eventually confronted her addiction. She entered recovery, became sober, and even inspired others by speaking openly about her journey. For a time, it seemed like she had reclaimed control not just of her life, but of her future. However, the human body keeps its own record. Years of substance use had already caused deep, irreversible damage. By the late 2000s, serious health issues began to surface. She was diagnosed with hepatitis C, underwent a kidney transplant in 2009, and faced ongoing complications affecting her heart and lungs. On December 31, 2015, Natalie Cole passed away at the age of 65. The official cause involved idiopathic pulmonary arterial hypertension, along with heart and kidney failure conditions widely associated with long-term health deterioration. Her story carries a powerful truth. Recovery can change a life, but it cannot always erase the past. In Natalie Cole's case, the battle was won, but the damage remained quietly shaping the ending. Wilson Pickett. Few performers brought raw energy to the stage quite like Wilson Pickett. Nicknamed Wicked Pickett, he didn't just sing, he exploded. With classics like In the Midnight Hour, Mustang Sally, and Land of 1,000 Dances, he helped define the very sound of soul music. His influence stretched across generations, earning him a place in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1991 and recognition as one of the genre's true architects. But the same intensity that fueled his performances also shaped his personal life. Off-stage, Pickett lived hard. Alcohol, particularly strong scotch, was a constant presence. It wasn't occasional or celebratory. It was routine. Before shows, to get ready, during backstage moments, and long after the crowd had gone home, drinking was woven into his daily rhythm. Those close to him often described it as relentless mirroring the all-or-nothing energy he brought to his music. Over time, the effects accumulated quietly. Chronic alcohol use is medically linked to high blood pressure, hardened arteries, and long-term cardiovascular damage. In Pickett's case, these risks became reality. As the years passed, his heart, once strong enough to power electrifying performances, night after night began to weaken. The damage wasn't sudden. It was gradual, built over decades of strain and lifestyle. On January 19, 2006, at the age of 64, Wilson Pickett died after suffering a heart attack at his home in Virginia. The cause was linked to cardiovascular disease, a condition often associated with long-term health stressors, including heavy alcohol use. His legacy remains untouchable. The music still moves people the same way it did decades ago. But his story carries a clear message. Even the most powerful performer cannot outrun the limits of the body. On stage, Wilson Pickett was unstoppable. Offstage, the damage to his heart told a different story, one that strength alone couldn't overcome. Jackie Wilson. Few performers in music history earned a nickname as fitting as Mr. Excitement. Jackie Wilson was not just a singer, he was a force of nature on stage. With hits like Lonely Teardrops and Your Love Keeps Lifting Me Higher and Higher, he helped shape the blueprint for modern soul performance. His electrifying style influenced icons like Elvis Presley and Michael Jackson, both of whom studied his movement, charisma, and vocal delivery. But behind the explosive performances was a man under constant pressure. To manage nerves and the demands of live shows, Wilson turned to alcohol, especially whiskey. It became a routine before stepping on stage after the spotlight faded and in the quiet moments in between. What seemed like control was over time dependence. Chronic alcohol use, particularly over many years, is strongly linked to cardiovascular damage, increasing the risk of heart disease and sudden cardiac events. On September 29, 1975, during a live performance in New Jersey, that risk became reality. In the middle of singing Lonely Teardrops, Jackie Wilson suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed on stage in front of a stunned audience. He had suffered a massive heart attack. Though he was revived, the lack of oxygen to his brain caused severe, irreversible damage. What followed was one of the most tragic chapters in music history. Jackie Wilson never regained consciousness. For the next 8 years and 4 months, he remained in a persistent vegetative state, his once dynamic body completely still. On January 21, 1984, he passed away at the age of 49 from complications including pneumonia. His story is a haunting contrast. A man who once made entire crowds rise to their feet in joy spent his final years unable to move or respond. The energy that defined him never disappeared, but his body could no longer carry it. David Ruffin. At the height of Motown's golden era, David Ruffin stood at the center of it all, as the unmistakable lead voice behind the Temptations' classic My Girl. He helped define a sound that would echo across generations. His voice, gritty, emotional, and deeply expressive, turned simple melodies into timeless records. For a moment, he had everything: fame, influence, and a place in music history. But success came with pressure, and Ruffin struggled to keep it under control. Over time, substance use became part of his life, and alcohol, particularly vodka, was often combined with cocaine during his later years. This combination is especially dangerous. Cocaine elevates heart rate and blood pressure, while alcohol alters how the body processes it, producing compounds that increase strain on the cardiovascular system. Together, they significantly raise the risk of overdose, heart failure, and sudden collapse. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, those close to Ruffin could see the toll it was taking. His appearances became inconsistent, his health more fragile. Still, the cycle continued. On May 31, 1991, after attending a party in Philadelphia where both alcohol and cocaine were consumed, Ruffin's body reached its limit. In the early hours of June 1st, he was taken to a hospital in critical condition. Doctors were unable to save him. David Ruffin died at just 50 years old. The official cause was an accidental overdose involving cocaine, with alcohol playing a significant contributing role. His story is a stark reminder that talent and legacy don't offer immunity. Even at the top of the music world, the combination of substances can quietly erode everything. The voice that once defined Motown didn't fade. It was overwhelmed by forces that built up over time until there was nothing left to fight them. Dinah Washington. They called her the Queen for a reason. Dinah Washington ruled the R&B and jazz charts throughout the 1950s with a voice that was precise, powerful, and unmistakably confident. Songs like What a Difference a Day Makes earned her a Grammy Award and cemented her place among the era's most dominant performers. She could move effortlessly between blues, jazz, and pop, commanding every note with authority. But behind that control was a life shaped by intense pressure, especially around image and expectations. Like many female artists of her time, Dinah faced constant scrutiny over her appearance. To manage her weight, she used prescription diet pills, many of which contained amphetamines, substances that stimulate the body but also place significant strain on the heart. At the same time, alcohol remained a regular part of her lifestyle, often consumed socially and privately. The danger was in this combination. Mixing alcohol with stimulants and later with barbiturate-based sleeping pills created a volatile chemical balance in her body. Alcohol amplifies the depressant effects of these medications, slowing the central nervous system, affecting breathing, and increasing the risk of fatal overdose, even when the substances are taken separately in controlled amounts. On the night of December 13, 1963, after hosting guests at her home in Detroit, Dinah Washington continued drinking. In the early hours of December 14th, she was found unresponsive. She was just 39 years old. The official cause of death was an accidental overdose of barbiturates with alcohol, identified as a major contributing factor. Her passing shocked the music world. At the height of her career, with her voice still at its peak, everything stopped in a single night. Dinah Washington's story is a powerful reminder that even those who appear in total control can be vulnerable to the hidden dangers of substance combinations. Even a queen is not immune when those forces collide. Grover Washington Jr. Few instrumentalists have shaped a genre as profoundly as Grover Washington Jr. Often called the father of smooth jazz, he blended jazz, soul, and R&B into a sound that felt both sophisticated and deeply emotional. His biggest hit, Just the Two of Us with Bill Withers, became a timeless classic, while albums like Wine Light helped define an entire musical era. To listeners, Grover represented control, elegance, and consistency, an artist who always seemed at ease. That image made what happened next even more shocking. Unlike many of his peers, Grover wasn't known for chaotic behavior or public struggles. His relationship with alcohol appeared moderate, even harmless on the surface. A glass of wine after a performance, a way to unwind, a daily ritual repeated over years. But that's where the danger often hides. Regular alcohol consumption, even without visible intoxication, can gradually raise blood pressure, strain the cardiovascular system, and weaken the heart over time. On December 17, 1999, Grover Washington Jr. had just finished taping a performance for CBS in New York City. He was in good spirits, talking casually with those around him. Then, without warning, he collapsed. No buildup, no visible distress, just a sudden cardiac arrest. He was rushed to the hospital but never regained consciousness. He was 56 years old. The official cause of death was a heart attack. While no single moment defined it, years of lifestyle factors, including consistent alcohol use, likely contributed to the underlying cardiovascular strain that made such a sudden event possible. His passing stunned the music world precisely because it didn't fit the expected narrative. There was no scandal, no obvious decline, just silence where there had been music. Grover Washington Jr.'s story carries a quiet but powerful message. Alcohol doesn't always announce its damage. It doesn't need chaos to be dangerous. Sometimes it works slowly, invisibly, until one ordinary moment becomes the last. Rufus Thomas.
Position for the next for the tune, so why don't you...
Few artists embodied the spirit of Memphis quite like Rufus Thomas, with hits like Walking the Dog and Do the Funky Chicken. He wasn't just a performer, he was an entertainer, in the truest sense, a singer-dancer, comedian, and radio personality who could light up any room. For decades, he remained a central figure in Southern soul, bringing joy, humor, and energy to audiences well into his later years. But alongside that vibrant public image was a lifelong habit that blended seamlessly into his social world. Rufus was known as a man who loved people and loved a good gathering. Bourbon was a constant presence at those gatherings, whether after shows, backstage, or at social events. It wasn't hidden or excessive in the dramatic sense. It was social routine and normalized. Over time, however, even this kind of steady, long-term drinking can take a serious toll. Medical research consistently shows that chronic alcohol consumption, even at moderate but regular levels, can contribute to high blood pressure, weakening of the heart muscle, and increased risk of heart failure. In Rufus Thomas's case, the effects built up quietly over decades. Despite appearing energetic and active into his 70s, the strain on his cardiovascular system continued beneath the surface. By the early 2000s, symptoms like fatigue and shortness of breath became more noticeable. His heart was no longer able to function as it once had. On December 15, 2001, Rufus Thomas passed away at the age of 84 from heart failure. At first glance, 84 years might seem like a long life, and it was. But those close to him believed he still had more to give. More stages to command, more joy to share. His story offers a subtle but important perspective. Longevity doesn't erase the impact of long-term habits. Even without a sudden or early death, the cumulative effects of alcohol can quietly take years away, years that might otherwise have been lived with the same vitality he brought to the stage. Clyde McPhatter. Long before soul music became a global force, Clyde McPhatter helped invent its very foundation. As the original lead voice of the Drifters and later a solo artist, his soaring gospel-infused tenor set the template for generations to come. Artists like Sam Cooke and Marvin Gaye drew directly from his style, shaping what would become the golden era of soul. Hits like Money, Honey, and A Lover's Question didn't just succeed, they defined a sound. But while his influence grew, his own career took a different path. Despite his contributions, McPhatter struggled with the business side of the music industry. Disputes over royalties, lack of proper recognition, and being pushed aside by the very system he helped build left deep emotional scars. As opportunities faded, frustration and disappointment took hold. That's when alcohol entered the picture more heavily. Bourbon became a daily escape, a way to cope with the bitterness of watching others rise using a blueprint he had created. Unlike the chaotic headline-grabbing addictions of some artists, his drinking was steady, consistent, and relentless. Over time, that pattern proved just as destructive. By the early 1970s, the physical toll was undeniable. Years of chronic alcohol use had severely damaged multiple organ systems. His liver showed signs of advanced cirrhosis. His kidneys were failing, and his cardiovascular system was weakened. He was frequently hospitalized, his body struggling to keep up with the damage that had accumulated over time. On June 13, 1972, Clyde McPhatter died in New York at just 39 years old. The official cause was heart failure, but it came as part of a broader collapse involving his liver and kidneys conditions widely associated with long-term alcohol abuse. His story carries a deep irony. The man who helped give birth to soul music didn't live long enough to see its full legacy. Forgotten by the industry he helped shape, he turned to alcohol, and in the end, it took more than his health. It took the future he helped create. Big Mama Thornton.
A millionaire? No!
Before the world associated Hound Dog with Elvis, it belonged to Big Mama Thornton. Her 1952 recording was raw, commanding, and unmistakably powerful, an authentic blues performance that went to #1 on the R&B charts. She later delivered another defining piece with Ball and Chain, a song that would be popularized by Janis Joplin. Yet despite shaping the sound and emotion behind these classics, Thornton received little financial reward or mainstream recognition. That imbalance left scars. While others built global fame on songs she helped define, she continued to work small venues, often struggling to make ends meet. The frustration of exploitation, combined with the harsh realities of the music industry at the time, pushed her toward alcohol. Hard liquor became a constant presence, not just for celebration, but as a way to cope with disappointment and neglect. Over the years, that coping mechanism turned into a long-term dependency. Chronic heavy drinking is closely linked to liver cirrhosis, cardiovascular damage, and overall organ failure. In Thornton's case, the effects accumulated quietly but relentlessly. By the early 1980s, her health had deteriorated severely. Her body, once strong and imposing, became frail. She lived alone in a modest boarding house in Los Angeles, far removed from the influence her music had achieved. On July 25, 1984, Big Mama Thornton was found dead in her room. She was 57 years old. The cause was heart and liver failure conditions widely associated with years of heavy alcohol use. Her story is one of deep injustice. A pioneering artist whose voice helped define modern music died in relative obscurity without the recognition or security she deserved. In her case, the damage didn't begin with alcohol. It began with an industry that took more than it gave. Alcohol simply carried that damage to its final, irreversible conclusion. Esther Phillips. Few artists embody both resilience and tragedy like Esther Phillips. She burst onto the scene at just 13 years old, topping the R&B charts and earning recognition as a true prodigy. Her voice, flexible, emotional, and deeply rooted in gospel and blues, set her apart early. But fame came fast, and so did hardship. Addiction entered her life in her teens, derailing her career for years. Yet Esther Phillips was also a survivor. In the early 1970s, she staged a remarkable comeback, delivering critically acclaimed performances and proving her talent had never faded. Songs like Release Me reminded audiences of her unique ability to blend vulnerability with strength. She managed to overcome heroin addiction, something many never escape. And for a time, it seemed like she had turned a corner. But one habit remained. Alcohol, especially gin, continued to be part of her daily routine. Unlike the drugs she left behind, it felt manageable, even harmless in comparison. It wasn't. Chronic alcohol use, particularly over long periods, can severely damage the liver and kidneys, often without immediate obvious warning signs. In Esther's case, the damage had been building quietly even as her career regained momentum. By the early 1980s, the signs became impossible to ignore. Her health declined rapidly. Jaundice, fatigue, and fluid retention pointed to serious liver dysfunction. Despite this, she continued working, pushing through physical limitations that her body could no longer sustain. On August 7, 1984, Esther Phillips was admitted to a hospital in Los Angeles in critical condition. She died later that day at just 48 years old. The cause, acute liver and kidney failure conditions strongly associated with long-term alcohol abuse. Her story is a sobering reminder that overcoming one battle doesn't guarantee victory in another. Esther Phillips defeated heroin, but alcohol quietly continued the damage. In the end, it finished what addiction had started, cutting short a career that had already proven it could rise again. Otis Blackwell.
The album is about
Behind some of the biggest hits in rock and roll history stood a name many listeners never knew: Otis Blackwell. A prolific and brilliant songwriter, he penned classics like Great Balls of Fire, All Shook Up and Don't Be Cruel, songs that helped define the sound of a generation and propelled artists like Elvis Presley to global superstardom. His melodies, hooks, and lyrical instincts were foundational to American popular music. Yet despite his enormous influence, Blackwell remained largely behind the scenes. He didn't perform his songs on massive stages or receive the same public recognition as the artists who recorded them. Over time, disputes over songwriting credits and financial compensation added to a growing sense of frustration. Watching others gain fame and fortune from his work, while his own name stayed in the shadows, took an emotional toll. In that quiet disappointment, alcohol became a constant. Bourbon wasn't a dramatic escape, it was a daily ritual. Consistent, steady drinking over many years can have profound effects on the body, particularly on the cardiovascular system. Medical research shows that chronic alcohol use is linked to long-term hypertension, which significantly increases the risk of stroke by weakening and damaging blood vessels. By the time Blackwell reached his later years, the cumulative damage had become severe. His blood pressure had been elevated for years, placing continuous strain on his vascular system. On May 6, 2002, he suffered a major stroke at his home in Nashville. He was rushed to the hospital, but the damage was too extensive to reverse. Otis Blackwell died that same day at the age of 70. The cause was a stroke widely associated with long-term hypertension conditions often linked to chronic alcohol consumption. His story is a quiet tragedy. A man who helped write the soundtrack of modern music died without the recognition his work deserved. In the end, while his songs lived on in the voices of legends, his own life faded in relative obscurity, marked by the slow, unseen toll of years spent coping in silence. Little Willie John. Few artists burned as bright and as briefly as Little Willie John. At just 18, he recorded Fever, a song that would become a standard covered for decades, influencing legends like James Brown and B.B. King. His voice was powerful yet controlled, blending gospel intensity with raw emotion. For a moment, he stood at the forefront of R&B, a rising force with the potential to shape the future of the genre. But that future unraveled quickly. Alongside his success came a growing dependence on alcohol. What began as a habit turned into a destructive pattern that affected both his career and behavior. Those around him described a volatile temperament often intensified by heavy drinking. In an industry that demands consistency, his reliability declined and opportunities began to slip away. The turning point came in 1964 when a drunken altercation led to the fatal stabbing of a man during a dispute. He was later convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to prison. The fall was dramatic. Within a few years, he went from chart-topping success to life behind bars. Alcohol didn't just damage his health. It played a role in decisions that changed the course of his life entirely. While incarcerated at Washington State Penitentiary, his health deteriorated. On May 26, 1968, Little Willie. John died in prison at the age of 30. The official cause of death was listed as a heart attack, though some accounts also mention complications like pneumonia and questions about medical care. What remains clear is that years of alcohol use combined with harsh conditions and stress contributed to his physical decline. His story is a stark reminder of how quickly talent can be overtaken by circumstance. A voice that once defined a generation ended in confinement far from the stage. In his case, alcohol didn't just shorten a life, it redirected it entirely from promise to tragedy. Little Milton. For more than 5 decades, Little Milton stood as a pillar of blues and soul, an artist whose voice and guitar bridged generations. With hits like We're Gonna Make It and Grits Ain't Groceries, he built a career defined by consistency, grit, and deep emotional delivery. Even into his later years, he was still touring, still performing with a level of intensity that artists half his age struggled to match. But behind that longevity was a quiet, unchanging routine. After nearly every performance, Milton would reach for whiskey. It wasn't chaotic or excessive in the public sense, it was habitual. A way to unwind, to come down from the adrenaline of the stage, to mark the end of another show. Night after night, year after year, that ritual became part of his identity. The danger with such patterns is not always immediate. It's cumulative. Medical evidence shows that long-term alcohol consumption can steadily increase blood pressure, damage blood vessels, and elevate the risk of stroke. In Milton's case, those effects built silently over decades. Despite warnings about his health, the routine continued, overshadowed by the demands and rhythms of a life spent performing. On July 27, 2005, Little Milton suffered a major stroke at his home in Memphis. He was hospitalized in critical condition, but the damage was severe. Just days later, on August 4th, he suffered a second fatal stroke. He was 70 years old. The cause was linked to cerebrovascular disease conditions often associated with chronic hypertension and long-term strain on the vascular system. His passing marked the end of a remarkable career, but it also revealed a quieter truth. The same routine that seemed harmless, one drink after each show, had over time contributed to irreversible damage. Little Milton's story is not about excess in a single moment, but about accumulation. Over years, even small, repeated choices can reshape the body until one day the damage can no longer be reversed. O.V. Wright.
For me and my baby go to bed.
Few voices in soul music carried as much raw pain and emotional truth as O.V. Wright. With songs like A Nickel and a Nail and 8 Men, for women, he delivered performances that felt less like entertainment and more like confession. His gospel-rooted intensity placed him alongside greats like Otis Redding and Al Green in terms of emotional depth, yet he never received the same level of mainstream recognition. That gap between talent and visibility became part of his struggle. Life on the road was relentless, constant touring, financial pressure, and the exhaustion that comes with performing night after night. To cope, Wright turned to a combination of substances, including cognac and drugs. What began as a way to manage fatigue and stress gradually became a dependency woven into his daily routine. Over time, the physical toll intensified. Chronic alcohol use, especially when combined with other substances and long-term stress, can severely impact the cardiovascular system, raising blood pressure, weakening the heart muscle, and increasing the risk of sudden cardiac events. In Wright's case, those risks compounded with the strain of a demanding lifestyle. By the late 1970s, warning signs were already present. His health had begun to decline, but like many artists in similar situations, stopping wasn't simple. The need to keep working, to tour, to earn, to stay relevant often outweighed medical advice. On November 16, 1980, O.V. Wright was rushed to a hospital in Alabama in critical condition. He was struggling to breathe his heart under extreme stress. Despite medical efforts, he died that same day at just 41 years old. The cause was cardiac failure linked to years of cumulative strain on his body. His story is one of quiet tragedy. A voice capable of moving listeners to their core was lost long before its time. In the end, it wasn't a lack of talent that defined his fate, but the weight of exhaustion, pressure, and habits that slowly wore his body down. Bobby Timmons. Few pianists captured the soul of jazz quite like Bobby Timmons. A central figure in the hard bop movement, he helped shape the sound of the late 1950s and early 1960s through his work with Art Blakey's Jazz Messengers and the Cannonball Adderley Quintet. His composition Moanin' became a defining standard rooted in gospel, rich in rhythm and instantly recognizable. Timmons wasn't just technically gifted, he played with a spiritual weight that made every note feel alive. But behind that brilliance was a quieter struggle. Timmons battled depression, and like many artists facing emotional strain, he turned to alcohol as a form of relief. Whiskey became part of his daily life, not as celebration but as escape. Over time, what may have started as a coping mechanism evolved into a dependency that followed him through rehearsals, performances, and long nights alone. The danger of chronic alcohol use, especially at high levels, is well documented. Long-term consumption can lead to liver cirrhosis, a condition where healthy liver tissue is replaced by scar tissue, severely impairing function. In Timmons's case, the effects became increasingly visible. His health declined, his career slowed, and the opportunities that once came easily began to disappear. By the early 1970s, he had largely withdrawn from the spotlight. Hospitalizations became more frequent as his condition worsened. Doctors warned that continued drinking would be fatal, but breaking the cycle proved difficult. The damage had already advanced to a critical stage. On March 1, 1974, Bobby Timmons died in New York at just 38 years old. The cause of death was cirrhosis of the liver directly linked to long-term alcohol abuse. His story is a stark reminder of how quickly brilliance can fade when personal battles go unresolved. The same hands that once created timeless music were ultimately stilled too soon. In the end, his talent endured in recordings, but his life was cut short by a struggle that never truly let go. Lexi Alagie.
Reach out, same nigga that you love, same nigga that.
At just 21, Lexi Alagie represented a new generation of raw, emotionally honest artistry. Her breakout collaborations with Kehlani, especially Jealous, introduced a voice that felt vulnerable, direct, and deeply relatable. Critics saw real potential, a young artist with the ability to translate personal struggle into music that connected instantly with listeners. But that promise was cut short in a way that reflects a growing and dangerous pattern. On New Year's Eve 2019, Lexi attended a party in Minneapolis. Alcohol, particularly vodka, was part of the celebration. At some point during the night, she also ingested fentanyl, a synthetic opioid known for its extreme potency. On its own, fentanyl carries a high risk of overdose. Combined with alcohol, the danger increases significantly. Medically, both substances act as depressants on the central nervous system. Together, they can slow breathing, reduce heart rate, and impair the body's ability to respond to distress. The result is often silent and rapid loss of consciousness, followed by respiratory failure. There may be no visible struggle, no warning signs that others immediately recognize. In the early hours of January 1st, 2020, Lexi Alagie was found unresponsive in her hotel room. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause was ruled an accidental overdose involving fentanyl and alcohol. Her death resonated far beyond her immediate circle because it highlighted a harsh reality. The risks are not confined to past generations or long careers. Even at the very beginning, even with everything ahead, a single night can change everything. Lexi Alagie's story is not just about loss. It's about how quickly opportunity can vanish when dangerous combinations come into play. The same environment that celebrates success can also expose young artists to risks they may not fully understand. And sometimes, that's all it takes. 19 legends from Whitney Houston to Billie Holiday left behind timeless music, yet shared a quieter thread. Alcohol as a constant presence that often amplified deeper struggles. Some faced pressure, others isolation, others industry neglect, but the outcomes echo across generations. So here's the real question. Were these tragedies purely personal choices, or did the music industry enable a culture that made self-destruction almost inevitable?